Hello, beautiful soul family, and welcome to the Walk On Podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. I'm your host, Britt Cannon, and this week's episode is called How to Heal from Betrayal. I've been thinking a lot about this because I've been getting caught up on Vanderpump Rules and the scandal of it all, and also, as I mentioned last week, I restarted therapy and in the past few months have had some contact with people who I had previously cut off. And it sort of made me start thinking, is betrayal a thing you can get over? Or how can we heal from betrayal? And the truth is, I don't really know. I have no idea. Can we heal from betrayal? I mean, people do, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about this and witnessing people kind of heal from betrayal and thinking about the people in my life who have let people back in and it's worked out for them or tried and it didn't work out, and just betrayal is such a big thing. In my experience, it's one of the hardest things to heal from because trust is broken. And once trust is broken, it's how do you come back from that? For me, love and trust are sort of intertwined. You can't really have love without trust, at least not intimate love. Love from afar, yes. I love who you are as a soul, absolutely. I wish the best for you and I hope you heal one day, yeah. But love, you're allowed in my life, I want to talk to you all the time, I want you to know what's going on with me, maybe not so much. Maybe I get a little bit stingy with my energy because I don't want to tell you a good thing I'm going through because I feel like maybe you're going to diminish it or find a way to talk shit about it. Or maybe I don't want to tell the bad things that are going on with me because you're going to use them against me. It's just it's hard to trust someone once trust is broken. And honestly, betrayal is, I think, a thing that if you live long enough, you find yourself on all sides of a betrayal situation, right? At points you might be the betrayer, at points you might be the betrayee, and I think it is kind of a human thing that happens. I think oftentimes we don't intend malice, and people who betray us don't intend malice. It's just sometimes things get out of control. Sometimes you lose the plot of the situation. Sometimes you're being really selfish and you're not thinking about anyone else. And sometimes, it is malicious. Sometimes it is trying to hurt someone or take them down a peg or there's all kinds of reasons that we engage in this type of behavior. And finding our way back from that, even if it's not the kind of forgiveness that is up close, even if it's just forgiveness and loving from afar, how do we find our way back to ourselves? How do we put the pieces back together? How do we not take that trauma of that betrayal in every single relationship we enter after that? These are big questions, and it's something I've been really thinking about and working on, and considering that maybe, no contact doesn't always have to be a permanent decision. Maybe sometimes you can change your mind. Maybe sometimes there's growth in the other person. Or maybe sometimes there's not, or maybe sometimes there is and you still don't want to be in contact with them. It's just I've just been marinating in all these questions, and I've been through this so many times now that it doesn't freak me out like it used to, but there is this kind of reality collapse that happens when you encounter new information along your journey and you're wow, I'm thinking about this differently than I was before. I have more information, I have more life experience, I'm able to access more nuance. It's not so black and white, which I think comes with maturity. I think that black and white thinking is something that's really strong when you're young, and then as you grow up you kind of loosen the reins a little bit and can engage with nuance a little more. And I think this is why like young people on the internet are so vitriolic, because like that's where their brains are at, and also the world seems very black and white. It's like very easy to understand and digest when it's black and white, but the nuance is like sometimes more uncomfortable. There's like a lot more discomfort. There's a lot more compassion that needs to be engaged. There's a lot more understanding. There's a lot more grace given. And those things are hard to do when we're not yet giving those things to ourselves. And so it takes a little bit of work to be able to access that. And I guess everything is everything. Like I touch that grace and it starts spilling out into other areas of my life. And, but I'm not sure like how far I want to go with that grace at this point. You know what I mean? I'm not fully ready to let go of the loving from a distance, or like let go of the safety I've constructed around myself, or loosen the boundaries, or I guess I'm still scared, right? Like betrayal is a big wound. It's so hard to come back from. And it does kind of change you forever. Talk about reality collapses, right? Betrayal means I trusted someone was close to me, like I had this person's back. I let this person into like my inner circle, and they somehow like made me look foolish for doing that. And, I think it's not really cool for us to expect ourselves to be like psychic. I have been through this many times when someone has betrayed me, or when I had a massive falling out with someone, where I was like, oh, why did I let them in? Like, I wish I hadn't let them in. I wish I had been smarter. I wish I would have seen it coming sooner. And the truth is, you see it when you see it. And like, you're not supposed to be psychic. You're supposed to give people chances. You're supposed to hone your discernment and, get more discerning, or more picky, or more just like observant, and have more of a say in your relationships, and not just come from a place of like loneliness and desperation where you're taking anyone who comes along. This is how I used to be. I was just like, excuse me. I was just like, love first, ask questions later. Like, I'll figure out these people's flaws at a later date. And then 4 or 5 years into it, I'm like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? So, you learn how to do that and you get faster at it. But there's never going to be a point, I don't think, maybe there is, and I'm just not there yet, where like you see someone and you're like, stay away from that person. Like, you have to engage with them a little bit in order to see it. Although now one of my goals in therapy is to learn how to have just like a casual connection. Like, I'm not talking sexually. I got that down when I was like 19. But I'm talking about like interpersonally. Like, there's been pretty much every time I've gone into business with someone, like they've been my best friend, and like we're joined at the hip, and then we try to start a business together, and then something interpersonal happens, and then it all falls apart because it's so high stakes. It's like your business partner and your best friend, and like you know everything about each other. Maybe you're even like frenemies low key or whatever. And like, I just like to move through the world and be able to just like sort of be warm and inviting and like engaging, but keep people on more of a like surface level until I get to know them at like to a degree where I'm like, all right, I feel ready to like let you into my inner circle. And I've been living that way sort of, but with COVID, it made it really easy to kind of get to know people slower. And also all the new friends I have in my life have been vetted by like other people in my life who were discerning, whose trust in people I trust. So they've been like vetted before I even had to know them. And so like, it's just a different set of circumstances. But as I re-enter the world and start trying to like network and make connections again, and like want to find an agent, want to find a manager and all that kind of stuff, I'm just like, scared because I don't want to get myself into a position where I'm in too deep too fast, and then before I know it, I'm having to like burn it all to the ground and start over again because I got in too deep with someone who didn't really deserve it and wasn't really trustworthy, and who was gonna light the match that would burn it all to the ground. You know what I mean? So in thinking about this, it's just like I realize how much fear I have been moving through life with. And it's not just romantic. I think we tend to like kind of zero in on romantic connections, and I definitely have this too. Like I know better than to put my jealousy on anyone else. Like I know better than to make my insecurities anybody else's problem. Like I know when it's a me thing and when it's a we thing, and I try to communicate about everything I'm feeling like super vulnerably and honestly. And but that doesn't mean I don't still feel scared and worried and triggered. And I think to a certain extent, like these feelings don't go all the way away. Like we're human, we're meant to have feelings. The point of healing isn't to cross some finish line where nothing ever bothers you ever again. The point of healing is just to feel better and be better every step of the way, and like just be as loving as possible as often as you can. And give yourself grace when you're not able to be your best self, and just be vulnerable and communicate. But this also happens with friends. It's like anyone who was bullied in childhood knows the feeling of like, being a grown-up and being in grown-up situations where you have all the say in the world and you could remove yourself at any time. And like, for all intents and purposes, you're safe. You have created a safe life for yourself. But when you're in social situations, you have that fear bubble up of like, is this person going to cross me? Or like, am I invited to this thing as a joke and everyone's going to bully me? Or whatever. Like we just move with such trauma. And especially like for me in friendships where I just like unquestioning trust, just like unrequited loyalty, just showed up ready to like throw down for whoever's corner I was in, no questions asked, just like engage that empathy, and just was a flying monkey is what they call it in like narcissistic healing info circles, is like when you're someone's Gretchen Wieners, you're like that's a Mean Girl reference. Flying monkeys is a Wizard of Oz reference. So you do someone's dirty work. And it's usually someone who like should be defending themselves, but for some reason they can't because they're just like too wounded and weak. And so, big bad sidekick comes in, Captain Save-A-Ho, being like, here I am to fight your battles. Like, that's my job. And, eventually it backfires and you're like, oh my God, I'm like so loyal to everyone and nobody's loyal to me. I thought it was so powerful, spoiler alert for Vanderpump Rules season 10, when Ariana was doing her like healing ritual and she wrote down that what she's releasing from her life is unrequited loyalty. And I'm just like, yes, like if you're going to heal from betrayal, that is the energy you want. You want like no more unrequited loyalty, and like to understand that that's what happened, that it's not on you. There was nothing you could have done. Like you showed up as authentic and pure and loving and loyal as you possibly could. And it's the other person's problem that like they betrayed that trust. If you show up as your best self, your most loving self, and like, yes, that doesn't mean you don't have problems. It doesn't mean that you don't struggle. It just means that like when I act in my life, I act in such a way where I consider you in my choices. And when someone isn't doing that back, it really fucking hurts. But it does kind of, once you're out of it and you understand the betrayal and you're like, okay, I'm starting over, it's just me, all the things do click, and you're like, there were red flags, or like, maybe I shouldn't have gotten in so deep with this person. And then, that can cause shame and self-blame and all that kind of stuff. And that sucks, but it is part of the healing process. And also it's part of like, how you like to sharpen a knife, you like run that knife sharpener steel thing against it, right? All those realizations of like what I could have done differently, they're just sharpening your sword of discernment. You know, they're just making the way clearer, and they're making sure that you're stronger in the future, that you choose more wisely, that you don't let people who don't deserve to be let in. You know, it's for your own benefit to have those realizations. So like if you can engage with radical self compassion instead of self judgment in those moments, just be like, this sucks. I see how I was like complicit in choosing someone who would do this to me, but also it's their problem, you know, their thing to work on. And what I need to work on is like making healthier choices for myself in the future. And I guess like that is the number one point on like how do we heal from betrayal. Number one is to realize that anyone who would betray you is like meant to be out of your life. Like it's okay to let those people go. It is necessary for you. Anyone who would do that to you, anyone who would treat you that way, anyone who would betray your trust, who would take things you told them in confidence and spread them around town and use them against you, or anyone who would lie on your name or gossip about you, anyone who would brutally cheat on you or whatever, like you don't have to have those people around, you know, and maybe you needed something so big and bad to let them go. Like maybe because you have that loyalty, you wouldn't have been strong enough to end the relationship unless it was this bad and in your face. And like, see it as a blessing, see it as what's meant to be will be, you know, and see it as a them problem. Like there are people who would cherish your loyalty, who wouldn't think of you as weak or gullible for trusting them. You know, that is a sick way to move through the world. I've actually had people like look me in the eye and be like, as they're taking advantage of me, right? Like as they're mistreating me, as they're betraying me, look me in the eye and basically be like, this is your fault. Like when someone lets me betray them, I see it as a character flaw on their part. Like if they wouldn't let me, I wouldn't do it. And that's why the kind of, you know, cliche phrase people throw around, like people treat us how we let them treat us. It's like true, you know, because if you have strong discernment, if you pay attention to the red flags, if you're like clocking those when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Like when you're registering those things, like you don't get in that deep with people who aren't worthy of that. You just like, you take it a little more slowly. You like listen to them when they tell you how they've treated people in the past. It's like a big red flag for men, like for people who deal with men is like, or anyone honestly, but this is like a classic kind of shitty man move where they're like, oh, all my exes are crazy. And it's like, red flag, you know? But before you hone your discernment, you might be like, oh, poor baby. Like, I can't believe you went through that. Whereas someone who's like more healed might be like, you know, tended to in the past have chosen people who are like not the most stable, or like maybe I have a tendency towards codependence and I have been in a lot of relationships with people with substance use issues, or like, you know, whatever. There's like a different way that you can frame that. Or like I've been in a lot of tumultuous relationships and I'm trying to work on it now. Like there's much more self-aware, non-blamey, like less misogynistic ways to kind of have that same conversation or express that same sentiment without taking zero responsibility, or like without it being like, oh, so you're going to call me crazy when I have an issue with your behavior. So, which is a form of gaslighting, right? So just understand that like, it's not about you. Like this is just like in the early 2000s when there was like all these scandals of like like less famous husbands cheating on their extremely beautiful, very impressive, like very sexy, more famous wives. And I remember being like 13 and being like, if Halle Berry can get cheated on, like, what does that mean for the rest of us? And I chewed on that for like years. And then I was like, actually, it's probably not about her. Like, probably once she just becomes a regular person, like, the dudes maybe lose interest or like want to take a powerful woman down or like have a sex addiction or but it's always like a them problem. It's not about her, it's not about you. Like, the most like responsibility you could take is that, like, I maybe need to be more discerning. I maybe need to take it more slowly. I need to examine my patterns and the kind of people I'm attracted to if this keeps happening over and over again. And maybe I need to like work on my patterns and my wounds that makes me sort of called to engage with people who treat me this way. So, like, that's step one. Is just, like, put the responsibility on the person who's doing the betraying. Take it with a grain of salt. Look at that person's patterns and be like, do they do this in every relationship? Basically, don't take that shit personally, even though it feels personal. Even if they might be running, like, a smear campaign on you all over town. Like, try not to take it super personally because it isn't. Like, people who behave this way tend to behave this way in all their relationships. And they really do see people who trust them as like weak, and therefore they deserve to be taken advantage of. And nobody deserves that. And like, truly being able to access love and compassion and trust and forgiveness is a huge strength. Many people, I should say, are moving through life like unable to let anything go. But because they don't think about it, because they like put up a wall and they're like, that's none of my business, I'm just gonna carry on. Like, they just are numb and moving through life like on autopilot and thinking that makes them strong because they don't think about things or they don't examine things and they think that it doesn't affect them. But it does. It's just like the people who spank their children. Content warning, I'm about to give parenting advice. No, I'm not a parent, but I have been a pseudo parent since I was a little kid. I have raised, I don't even know how many kids in my lifetime, and I've been a nanny for half my life. So take it with a grain of salt or don't. But it's like the people who spank their children and they're like, I was spanked as a kid and I'm fine. It's like, are you? Because you're hitting your kid. Like, you're literally playing out a trauma cycle and you don't see it. You don't see it. And the reason why you don't understand how humiliating, how traumatizing, how unnecessary it is to be hit as a child is because probably you were so traumatized by it, but that you don't remember, can't access the feelings you had as a child. This happens in my work all the time when like I try to guide someone towards like inner child work, and people literally can't even handle thinking of themselves as children. Like, just the thought of thinking of them as a child, picturing talking to them, trying to access like their perspective at that time in their life is so overwhelming that they just burst into tears or they like reject the exercise. So if you're someone who can like handle that, if you're someone who can feel the feelings of what you've been through or what you're going through, if you are engaged with life, if you're engaged with your feelings, or if you're even working on it, if you have trusted someone, if you have really opened up to someone, if you have really loved someone, like, that is not a weakness. Baby love. That is the strongest thing you can do. It makes you like superhero status, and it's necessary in the world. Like, please don't become hard and brittle and bitter. Please just stay soft, stay exactly as you are. Get smarter, yes. Get more informed, absolutely. Address those wounds and patterns, but don't let that softness turn hard with adversity, especially if it's adversity in the hands of people who don't know how to love, who don't know how to have compassion, who don't know how to feel their feelings. Like, you're playing different games, and sometimes you just gotta let go and let God and understand like this is going to hurt like hell, but I am actually better off without this person in my life. And honestly, usually the universe rewards you with the act of pruning your garden by blessing you with like I'm getting the image of like when Mario eats the mushroom and he's like, like it blesses you with kind of power-ups where you grow in ways that are like mind-blowing to you. Like it feels like a miracle, the blessings that come in as you learn how to live without these people, as you let your life flourish when all you have to worry about is yourself, you know, and not in a selfish way, but in a really, in a way that ends up making you pour from your cup more freely because like you are taken care of. You're not being drained. You're not sitting around worrying or going through these like spiraling thoughts about like, is this person talking shit about me? Like as soon as I leave the room, what do they say? Or like, you know, as if I don't pay enough attention to my partner, are they going to stray? Or just like, you know, you can get off the merry-go-round of those worrying thoughts, especially if you're no longer like being betrayed or abused or manipulated or however you want to look at it, or even just like not having your loyalty or love reciprocated. Because if you haven't listened to my episode on unrequited love, go check it out. But like in those relationships where there's no reciprocity, where you're not getting back what you're putting into it, and it's not even about like one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me. It's like if there's never any reciprocation, if there's never any consideration for you or your feelings, if there's never any like requited loyalty, you know, if you're expected to show up for someone and go above and beyond and like be super available to them and always have patience and forgiveness for them, and like you do the slightest thing wrong and it's the end of the world, and you're the worst and like why do I even mess with you or whatever, then you know, just understanding that better is out there, and that like sometimes we're so preoccupied with the most demanding people in our lives that we don't have room for good love. You know, it's just like if you have a pie and 75% of it is taken up with 75% is taken up with people who are super demanding, who take all your time and energy, who run you ragged, who keep you in a triggered kind of thought spiral because they're hypercritical, or they are super distant, or they run away anytime there's any intimacy, or like, you know how these things play out. Like you keep finding out they're talking shit about you, but they're supposed to be your best friend. Like I could name examples all day. It keeps you in a state of like hyper arousal. Like you feel like you need to engage with that vigilance and be like, I need to make sure this isn't happening to me anymore. Like, what are they going to say next? What am I going to find out next? Like you're on pins and needles, so stressed out that like that's all you have time for. And you'll find yourself even when you're engaging in, I have a friend who's like my best friend in the whole world. She's one of the most amazing humans on the face of the earth. She's so loyal. She's so smart. She's so down. She's so just like direct and lovely and honest and just like incredible. But the first few years of us getting to know each other, it was both of us unpacking a mutual toxic friend we had, and like that's what we spent all our time doing. And now when we talk, we have like so much more to talk about because neither of us are engaged with that person anymore. And it's just like, oh, you don't realize how much time and energy and attention you're putting on these relationships until they're out of your life, and then you're like, oh my God, I have so much free time, you know, like I'm thriving out here, even just by the fact that like I can go to bed when I want. I don't have to like hop out of bed to pick up someone drunk who, you know, needs a ride, or someone who's in crisis with their boyfriend, or like, you know, all the things that people demand of us. Or like I don't have to spend 3 hours a day talking to my mom on the phone because she needs like constant attention and she never created a life for herself outside of her children. And then I have to deal with the guilt trip about not talking to her enough. And like that cycle, once you step off of it, it's just like, I have so much time. I have so much energy. I can focus on me. And it's not a selfish thing. It's from a place of like, put your mask on first in the airplane crash. Like, you have to take care of yourself. You don't have to fuck people over to do that. You don't have to abandon other people. You don't have to reject all your relationships. Like, you can fill your own cup and take care of yourself. And the people who really love you, who really get it, are doing the same. And nobody's expecting too much of anybody else because everybody's needs are taken care of. It doesn't mean you can't rely on people. It doesn't mean you can't have community. It just means that, like, if everybody is taking care of themselves and giving themselves what they need, when you commune, it's on a like choose not need basis. Like, I love you, I like you, I want to be around you, and I am choosing you. Not I need you. Not I'm not going to be okay if you're not in my life. That's how we slip into codependence, and that's coming from a place of fear and not a place of love. And it's like Maya Angelou said, love liberates, it doesn't bind. Real quick, we're going to take a break for some ads, and we'll be back in a second. Bye.